last meeting. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
I will second it. All in favor of approving? Aye, aye, aye. Okay, the minutes are approved. Now we'll move on to a discussion of the public information officer role. Kevin's gonna talk to us about that.
All right.
Yeah, this is something we've been wondering
Exactly.
about for a long time. and so-
Yeah, so I'll give you guys an overview and then happy to answer any questions that you all may have. So for those of you that are new, my name is Tom Polito, I'm the Neighborhood Affairs Division Director of the Marketing Communications Department. So what our team does is we act, if you will, as the public information specialists and officers for the different departments. And the way, just for some background, the way the division came about was there used to be public information staff in different departments. So you had in CIP, you had public information specialist, public works, you had a public information officer, and then different department, then in communications, you had a communication resource person. And you had really different departments interacting with the public on different projects, but there was no unity. So right before COVID, like 2019, 2020, we formed under the previous manager, with the leadership of, or the previous manager Morales, but really under the leadership of Alina Hudak, we were able to create the Neighborhood Affairs Division. And what that did was we took existing staff from CIP, Public Works, and the communications person, and we formed this new division under the marketing communication frame. So we took their public information officers, and then the idea behind the division was to have kind of a unified front whenever interacting with the public and on projects. Each in CIP mostly, and in Public Works at the time, there were these public information officer agencies that the city would hire to assist with the public outreach for projects.
Like media relations group.
Yeah, so we have 4 of them, and we've always had a pool that goes through procurement. And what the pool is, we put out an RFP, request for proposals, and we asked for the different agencies in the industry to please, send us a proposal if you're interested, or I think it's an RFQ, request for qualifications. So we have 4 of them from the previous contract, and then we renewed it, I want to say in 2020, I think right when we formed the division. So the 4 that we have now is Media Relation Group, then we have HML Public Outreach, then we have Valerian Group, and we have Media Relation Group, and then Infinite Source Communications. And Infinite Source, Media Relations, these are all firms that, and HML, these are all firms that actually work off the FDOT contract. So the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, they have the same process. So they have these PIO firms that FDOT hires. FDOT hires them more in a way, instead of having a neighborhood affairs division, I believe they only have 1 person who is their public information officer for FDOT, and then they subcontract, if you will, to these agencies that actually report to FDOT, they're part of their staff, but they don't work for FDOT, they work for the agency, but they have agency emails from FDOT, so if you have,
I'm lost in the flow.
Yeah.
I'm loving it, but I'm not getting it.
Okay.
So these vendors, Infinite Source, HML,
Yep.
and MRG.
And Valerian.
Oh, sorry, and Valerian, right. They all are FDOT.
Well, HML, everyone except Valerian, they also, because they're an agency, they also do contract work for FDOT and other.
Kevin, Valerian works for Broward DOT. The others work for Miami-Dade and the Keys.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Lauren. So
Hi,
Lauren's
Lauren.
also on. So Valerian, all of these agencies, if you will, when we put out this request for proposals, they do this type of work throughout our region. So they do this, and when I say this type of work, city construction, municipal civil work is what, so it's like a PR agency, but their focus is construction and public outreach, rather than a PR agency that their focus is fashion or something. This is like their bread and butter.
Fashion would be interesting.
Right?
The FDOT connection though is important to us because of the experience that these groups have.
Yep.
not because of the connection with FDOT, right? I mean,
No,
that doesn't,
no,
we
it-
don't go through
And it's
FDOT.
important to us too, because exactly to the fashion point, you know, we had an agency applying to our pool and our request for qualifications, and when we go through, let me walk you through that process. When we do this request for qualifications, our procurement department leads it, we meet with all of them and they do a presentation for us. Typically, they come in person. With COVID and, you know, the rise of hybrid, we've been doing hybrid meetings where they'll do a presentation for us, and it's like an interview. You're interviewing an entire organization, and they'll bring out all of their, you know, all of their best PIOs, and they'll talk about previous experience, and they'll go over these projects. They'll go over the FDOT projects, the work for Broward County, and they'll highlight. Sometimes they'll do like a case study on. So MRG is the PIO for the 395 bridge. So all of the updates you get are from Oscar. And you'll notice Oscar doesn't have an MRG, typically doesn't have an MRG email. He has like, if they created the brand around that project, which I think is Connected Miami. So he works for MRG, he's one of the principals actually, but this is one of his projects that he's working on, and he's the main contact. And that's things we look at, you know, as an organization. We're looking for agencies that requested to participate in our pool. We're looking for their previous experience because we want people that understand the industry, and especially if they're doing work for partner agencies, there's some things we could borrow in the process, which we've done. For example, when we do our fact sheets and such and mailings, you know, they'll share with us previous experience, you know, on that DOT project, they did this, like they were able to mail fact sheets and meet with certain constituents, and that's something we'll add to our project. So I guess that's an overview of how we select our PIOs and the different PIO firms that we have. So the PIOs, we changed the name. They're the Public Information Liaison. So they're a liaison of community and the neighborhood affairs and the city, really. So they're an extension of our team. So that's really how we use them. Lauren's on the line. She's our South Beach neighborhood affairs manager. Gabriela Gonzalez, she's our Mid Beach neighborhood affairs person. She's the coordinator. And then we have an open position for North Beach. So each of them have the opportunity, working with a department, to hire an additional PIO firm to assist out of the pool. So what that looks like is when there's a large scale neighborhood project, which is First Street, West Avenue, eventually we'll have North Beach coming online. Those projects, typically, they require more public outreach than a smaller project in your neighborhood. Not that they're not equal, but for those larger projects, we're able to bring on one of these firms through the department. They help fund it, and then that person from the PIO firm, whether it's HML, MRG, they'll assign a PIO. That PIO will be an extension of us to be a contact in the community. So if you look on our project web pages, you can find contact information for Heather. On West Avenue specifically, Heather Leslie, she's one of the principals at HML. She's our boots on the ground. For Lauren and I, it's really, we don't have the time to go to all of these meetings and really no key to do some of the administrative work that Heather is able to do. So Heather is interacting with the community. She's helping us create the advisories. She's going to each of the one-on-one meetings with all the different properties, and then she's organizing them. And it's not just, what's good about these firms is that when we hire them through a contract, there's different buckets, as Lauren calls it. So through these buckets, we have a main public information liaison. We also have hours for an assistant public information liaison, which is it's a lower tier, but it gives us more flexibility. And then we have graphic design hours. So through that, while you have this PIO, but you have multiple people under that agency. So it's a great extension.
But you don't always hire all three tiers for any project. You just like Heather is a principal, so she'd be a main PIO.
Well, and
contract.
They staff it. Yeah, exactly. So it's up to them to staff it for us. They provide resumes. Even though Heather is the principal, she operates at the PIO funding, whatever that hourly will be. And then she has additional staff that will be the assistant PIO on that project.
But she'll probably have an assistant, so the budget for that project
But our
includes.
projects are, yeah, that's a great point. To that point, when we create these contracts, they are a not to exceed contract. So what we do is we will, you know, through experience and discussing with the project team, we'll come up with an estimate. And then we'll go to a PIO firm like MRG and we'll explain to them the project. And then we'll tell them an estimated amount of hours per week. So when we put that estimate together, that's where then we ask for them to break it down, and depending on the cost of the budget of the project. We ask them to break it down, so we have a main PIO, and then we have assistant PIO hours, and then we have graphic design hours, but it's not to exceed. So you may have, let's say a project, proposal that is at like, let's say, you know, just for sake of argument, it's at 100,000. That doesn't mean we're gonna use all the 100,000, it's just, this is not to exceed. And then it's really working with the project team to make sure, A, we don't exceed that, and we're being cost effective. So when they send in their invoicing and whatnot, there is a breakdown of what was done in that period. So that way we can review, make sure we review the work throughout the project, but make sure everything adds up, if you will, and monitor.
They are hired for the life of the project needs, right? So
They are hired for, yes, ultimately, that's the idea. On some of our longer term projects, they may not, it depends where we are. Sometimes a project will term out, or their contract will term out and the project continues, and then at that point, we make an internal decision, you know, should we extend their contract for the end of this project closeout, if it's a closeout? Typically, we do, but we always have an option, and we have in the past where a project is starting to phase out, and it's something that, you know, Lauren herself or Gabriella can handle, or I can handle, because there's not a lot of outreach at that point. They're more needed in the beginning of a project, going into design, in the middle of construction, because they're the point of contact. So like when a project's wrapping up already, and we finish the major construction, then we'll start to let go of that PIO and transition them into another project if we have one available.
Does anybody have a question for Kevin or Lauren at this point? And you probably have more to say, but because I have tons of them. So this is so interesting because I think as a resident, and also having been involved in the South of Live project, the First Street project from its beginning, really. I was never clear about everything you just said.
Okay.
I wonder, I know obviously on the project websites people could go and find out, but is there a place where people can go, where residents can go and find out, hey, just kind of what you said, like here's what PIOs do and here's who our groups are, meet the members.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, going back to the creation of neighborhood affairs, we're looking for just seamless, like which also adds to, so there's a neighborhood affairs about page, where that it's kind of meet your neighborhood affairs team.
Right.
And they're the faces, where we try to act as the faces of the public outreach and the contacts.
But that's not true in terms of the main PIO.
The main PIO in a project
is the face.
It
for the people.
would be the face for the main PIO for like a West Avenue project. Heather's the person that's communicating with people. So that's a good point. That's something we could look into, and maybe elaborating on her role on the project webpage. Today, it's more we focus on our neighborhood affairs team because they're the ones that will
But you
field questions from the
see the
community.
potential disconnect.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
I don't know if anybody else says, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a point to make on this.
Yeah.
I live on 45th Street, so Mid Beach,
Okay.
and I've been
Like
emailing.
Collins or
No, like on the other, by North Beach Elementary.
North Beach? Okay, got it. Yeah.
But I've been emailing with Gabriella about the 41st Street PO, the bond, the GO program,
Okay.
and what's happening with that, because there's supposed to be like, I think 20 million allocated to fixing up 41st Street.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure whatever happens to that money.
Yeah.
And then she put me in touch with Amy, who I guess is the PO, but she never responds to me. So who's
no.
liable for me?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's good?
What was your name again?
My name is Dries.
Okay, let me look into, is it Amy Mehu?
Yeah,
Yeah, Amy Mehu is the executive director, does not associated, if you will, with the city, she's not a PIO.
Okay.
She's her own entity for 41st Street. I'll have to look into, I think I saw a response floating around. So real quick to answer your question, we have, yes, the funding allocated through GeoBond dollars.
yeah,
We have a GeoBond oversight committee that's actually meeting tomorrow.
I'm gonna go with
And they go into all the different details, they get project updates from CIP. So what Gabby should have done, and what I think she was working on, was getting an update from CIP. I think she went to Amy to get an update on what the bid is doing. The bid is an external agency, it's like the city and the bid are two separate people. But I think Gabby was trying to get you an update from the bid themselves, because they have their own things in the work that are outside of our project. And that's a fairly new bid, so it's kind of exciting in a way that they got their act together as a bid. They were able to form this bid now, and when the GeoBond project comes online, we're gonna do the construction, and then the bid they could either carry out, new furniture along the area, so it's an added piece of it.
yeah.
But yeah, I'll check in, I know.
But I think it's a relevant example, because as a
Yeah.
resident, it's very difficult to find out who am I really supposed to talk to here.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Thank you, Dries, and make sure to maybe write your email and everything in name so that Kevin can take it back or.
Yeah, no,
Email him, so, anybody on the committee have any questions? Cause I still have tons. I know that we're here on it.
I did actually,
Yes.
I was curious, you mentioned these 4 contractors, is there a certain specialty of each one, or how is each one assigned to each project?
so that's a great question, so through our pool, what we try to do is we really wanna make sure that everyone in the contract has the ability to have a project, but with, in compliance with our procurement rules as a city, it could come down to most qualified. So if a PIO firm has more experience in one area of the city or on one type of construction, for example, on Venetian Causeway, we're starting a project, we have a meeting tonight, and we're gonna be doing a boring project, which is directional drilling. So if there's a firm that specializes in boring or specializes in vertical construction and building buildings, then, and they're in our pool, then we could select them based on just experience and qualifications over, but typically what we try to do is just kind of rotate to ensure that they all have equal amount of work when it's feasible. So does that answer your question?
It does,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
thank you. And do all of these PIOs, do they report to you or someone at the city?
Yeah, so they're all in a procurement contract, and the way, when we created neighborhood affairs, going back to that, part of the perks is that we wanted to have kind of overreach on all the PIOs. We didn't wanna have a department hiring a PIO and then having them as their point of contact, and then we're back to square one of all these different contracts. So they all report into the neighborhood affairs division, and then I have them all actually, contracting and whatnot, all the paperwork goes into Lauren, and then Lauren is the one who's gonna assist each of the departments whenever they need a PIO. She'll sit with them and understand what the project is, and then choose somebody based on those qualifications and needs. So they all eventually funnel into us, but they get paid by the different departments.
Just a follow-up there.
Yeah.
So who then oversees, directs, and evaluates the performance of?
So that comes back into, that's a collaboration between our team and the different department that hires them. So procurement, we do an evaluation of all of our contracts, I believe it's once a year or so, just to make sure that they're in good standing. And when that evaluation's done, it's done, I believe it's done per contract issued, so it's per, so like if transportation has a contract with the PIO and Public Works, they get 2 evaluations, even though it's one firm. And then Lauren and I are both able to evaluate them, but then we also have our partners in transportation. Another role the PIO that we.
They do a check-in every year, and then when a project completes, which we love when that happens, they, the responding department, like if it's a public works project, then it would be like me and Kevin reviewing and public works reviewing, and they keep an evaluation of the firm on file.
And one of the tasks that we haven't gone into is, in each of these construction projects, there are weekly, bi-weekly meetings that are occurring to monitor construction activity. The PIO is somebody who would sit in those meetings, and the idea is that they're bringing concerns from the community and understanding what's the next project schedule directly to the project managers. So that's where those departments have experience with the PIO, so they can help us evaluate.
So the PIO is going to your internal meetings.
Yeah.
To get the information back to the people and also to bring forward the
Exactly.
concerns from the people. Those meetings, I would guess are not public meetings, obviously,
No, they're just
But-
internal, yeah.
but where is that information captured, or do you, in other words, I guess where I'm trying to go is, sort of thinking about what Dries brought up,
Yeah.
and people wanting to make sure that they know their thoughts, ideas, concerns, whatever are getting through.
Yeah.
Do you see that resident feedback is being captured in those meetings, or even addressed, or maybe it's not coming in, or? I don't know.
In those meetings, in a typical, and this is like really inside baseball, kind of looking under the hood.
Like
In
inside.
every construction project, there's going to be like a 2-week look ahead, and then in that 2-week look ahead, they'll provide us with a schedule. Then they'll go over like needs and wants for the construction project, and all of them, especially, I don't know if it's just part of our contract or construction in general, there's always a public outreach front, or agenda item for the meeting. And then when we hit that agenda item, there's usually, not the contractor, but somebody who's running the meeting, a project manager type, it's either from CIP or from a different agency. And when we get to public outreach, it's the PIO's time to bring forth any complaints from the communities, questions from the communities, concerns. So, yeah, it is captured, and it's directly fed to the contractors and the field crews. And sometimes there are heated debates on, wants and needs from PIO, community outreach, versus what they're able to do. And that's where all that stuff gets hashed out.
And that's the important part.
Direct resident complaints, like what we were mentioning, not 41st Street specifically, but there'll be questions that, that gets answered in the meeting, and then following the meeting, if there's an answer, we're able to respond to the resident. And there's typically communication with the PIO and the stakeholder, like, hey, I've sent this in, for feedback, I'm working on a response for you. So they understand that there's a delay or whatnot. It's not like they have all the information readily available. There's some things that have to get engineered, some residents may ask for it.
At any given time, how many PIOs are PIOing? How many people are on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I think at any given time, we have 4 companies. These 4 companies, the ones that are in the pool, those are the only PIOs we're allowed to hire. So at any given time, you could say all 4 of them are engaged. It depends on the different projects.
So right now with the projects we have ongoing.
Right now, the projects we have ongoing, I believe all 4 are engaged. You have Heather on West Avenue.
Yeah.
The Valerian Group coming on board for the Venetians project that's kicking off.
Okay,
I believe MRG is on First Street. And
Mhm.
Infinite Source is helping us with transportation projects and smaller projects.
They're also on Lincoln Road.
Oh, and on the upcoming Lincoln Road project. So yeah, all
And
4 are
Yeah,
engaged.
Heather has hours for 41st Street too, but has not been, we have not been super active because the project has been working itself out.
Yeah.
What about smaller projects?
So smaller projects, as a cost savings and, depending really on the size of the project, those are done in-house through our team of 3. So that's where, Lauren, Gabby, and I, and then the next person that will come online for North Beach, it's broken up north, middle, south. So any project in South Beach smaller, like, I'm trying to think what we're doing now, like the seawalls here on Jefferson Avenue. Those projects are typically handled through our division.
Okay.
Paving projects, parking lot projects,
Yeah.
environmental projects.
So any resident issues would reach out then to your office?
Yeah,
for those?
Yeah, so our kind of bread and butter are project outreach and creating collateral for projects, meeting with the different departments to get ready for future projects, and then we are also any resident concerns that come up through the different departments are usually routed to us. We do have a customer service team, they assist us, but you know, we're kind of the next tier up. If they can't help, they'll send it over to us. Any calls in the city, we sit in the city manager's office, even though we're under marketing and communications. We physically are there, so any customer concerns or resident concerns, they'll come in and we'll field those as well.
Okay. I still have.
Yeah,
I
please.
still
Yeah.
have- I'm a fountain.
Yes,
So for First Street,
yes.
that's MRG, right?
First Street is MRG, yeah.
And First Street has been, you know, sort of the epic, long-running show
Yeah,
on our channel.
definitely.
So I imagine we've gone through several point of contact PIOs.
Yeah, and that's a great point, in the PIO front and well, thankfully, we have Lauren, who's been here, I think close to probably 12 or 10 years. Lauren was actually a PIO once upon a time, not to put you on the spot, Lauren, but she, worked with one of the companies that did a previous project in the South of Fifth area. She eventually came to the city, was in CIP as one of those public information specialists, then got brought on to the neighborhood affairs team. So she's actually not a good example in the different transitions, because we were able to acquire her from the PIO world. Then
It also may be part of Claire's confusion because Claire knew me on the consultant side and then also continued to know me within the city. So if she didn't know when
Yeah.
or exactly where the transitions were happening, it's
Well-
because she knew me across the bridge.
No, I remember,
Yeah.
I remember you making the transition, going to the light.
So on First Street specifically, we had MRG, we had MRG in the beginning of the project, and we had a PIO named Jeanette Gorgas, who was amazing. The Jeanette eventually, COVID came and she moved on to a new role in her life and left the PIO, well, not really, but she left MRG. Then that project kind of went dormant for a little bit, and I believe we closed the contract, we formed the neighborhood affairs division. The project came back, this is all behind the scenes. Project came back online, and when it came back online and we started moving again under Roy Coley, the previous public works director, it was like, hey, we should bring back on a PIO firm, and thankfully MRG had rebid, they were in our pool again. So that's an example where we said, based on their qualifications and experience, let's rehire the old firm that was here in the beginning, because they have a lot of the previous data points, even though it's a different person. Their leadership also stays involved in the project, and then Lauren worked closely with them in the past, so that's an example where we hired one.
So you have, who's the PIO from MRG, all these alphabet soup things, the PIO from MRG doing INFO for First Street?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, who is it now?
And now it's Diana,
Diana.
yeah.
And so First Street people involved in the impact area for that project should know who Diana is.
Yes, I think, you know, going back to West Ave, when that project gets going, Diana's gonna be the one that's in contact with them daily in some cases. I think it's important for them, and the way we've been messaging the project is Lauren's name is really front and center on everything, and Diana as well too, because I don't wanna be in a situation, you know, hopefully Lauren's here forever, but Diana isn't really our employee, so I don't wanna lose somebody in the transition of where we are today, because right now, we're in like, I think we're approaching 60% design. So Diana is front and center, she's attending all the meetings on our behalf. residents on the website are gonna see Lauren's information and their contact Lauren. It's immediately gonna reach the project team, including Diana.
I'm just wondering, because, I know, our guest has made a valid point
Yeah.
about accessibility and understanding who to call for what, and in listening to you, and your very thorough description of how everything works, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
Right, you guys deal with a lot of moving parts,
Yeah,
a lot of different departments within the city. You have your own vendors, and you have, everything you have to do.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if, and committee members feel free to, opine too, but I'm wondering if there's a way, sort of like the meet your PIO team thing. If on every project site, there's a way to, Lauren, obviously you don't want people, probably everyone reaching out to PIOs. I don't know if you're doing that.
well, the idea, I want everybody reaching out to the neighborhood affairs team.
Right.
I think, Lauren, Gabby, and the next person, those are, part of their role is to be our point of contact.
But the
So-
pathway, it seems like the pathway should also map to the familiar face that you're gonna deal with as the project goes on, which often is multi-year.
Yeah, and that's a fair point that I think we could look into, like West Avenue, active construction, active meetings being scheduled, so maybe having some information on that direct PIO, that's Heather, maybe having some information on her or contact on the website. That's something we could look into, but there hasn't been, and there shouldn't be any lag between. As soon as Lauren or I get an email, an example was, actually, is an example to your point. On Monday, I received a call from a resident, who was going to sign, her meeting was organized by Heather. And she was going to sign her harmonization agreement. And we have a Rickman field office, Rickman's the contractor, so they set up a field office in the field, near construction. So she was invited by Heather, and she was invited to the Rickman field office, but she called City Hall, because she was a little concerned that, Heather is an outside agency, she doesn't have a Miami Beach email, and Rickman has a field office, so she's like, she's seen some scams online, so she called me. I spoke instantly, she reached out to me, she was already we made arrangements for her to come to City Hall and execute everything here so she can feel comfortable, meet the staff. Lauren participated in that meeting, but there's no lag between, the second we get something, we're looping in who's ever helping on that team, because they're an extension of us, so.
Of course, in cases as important as harmonization agreements, you have higher touch with people, I would guess.
Yeah, definitely.
It wouldn't make sense, but for general questions of people who just don't understand something or have a question, I don't know, just also as the public meetings sort of progress, and I remember this from South of Fifth, is that I'm sure Lauren remembers it too, before and after her transition. I think it was Jeanette.
Yeah,
Some of those meetings, I wasn't clear, as president of South of Fifth, like how that meeting was gonna get run.
yeah,
And I don't know if the game has been up-leveled a
yeah.
bit, I would hope, and
There was a few, I think that was the one where like Roy came in with the different panels and we were the first, we were in the community room.
We had-
There was
that's
just no
also-
meeting until the end.
there were several,
Yeah,
yeah, where I thought it was a little bit of chaos and old.
yeah,
I'm not-
what we've started to do as a priority is going into a new project. Where early feedback from this group is implementing like focus groups, so we've on our newest one, the neighborhood improvement project for North Beach. We had a sub-focus group of early advocates and neighbors that have been involved in the community, only like 5 or so. And we shared with them, got some feedback on the project. Now we're scheduling a public meeting with the general public. That one doesn't have a neighborhood association per se, like how Great Softnet was ran. But on every project, we really try to get, not buy-in, but we try to make sure we use the neighborhood association as a focus group, if you will. So when we go to the public meeting, they have a bit of an understanding of what the project may be, so they know how the meeting's gonna be run. Because the meetings and all our meetings that are the same format, going forward now. If they're not virtual, they're hybrid, and then we have a presentation by staff, and then afterwards there's Q&A. And then we always stay at the end to answer any questions. We've tried the open house format. I don't feel the open house format, I feel some people wanna come to a public meeting, get it done, understand what's happening, and when you give them open house, they're just kind of lost a little bit.
That was the one you were thinking about where people got lost.
Yeah, that was chaos.
Yeah,
I remember
with-
that day.
Yeah, there's
I was lost.
There were boards all over the road.
Yeah.
and Ron
Claire,
was-
there are also some cases where the HOA will host like their monthly meeting and they'll ask the city to come present on whatever the topic is. And there were a couple that were south of Fifth meetings that they wanted just kind of like like information booths around the room. I think if I'm remembering the meeting that you're talking about. So there's also like, it's a fine line between, you know, city hosted public meeting versus
Actually,
HOA
that
meeting
was-
that the city's talking about.
Yeah, I understand, but that was a notice SOFNA meeting.
Mhm.
But I would, Marie Peter, I believe, was the president of SOFNA at that time.
Yes.
And it was her call to put these stations around, thinking that people would mingle and go and look at the pictures. And what happened is there was no structure to it, so the people just didn't know, did the meeting open? What were they supposed to do? Where do I go now? And is it time to leave, or do I just have another hors d'oeuvre? They didn't know. I mean, so I think that was just kind of, that was like a happening from '70s or something. But I think most of them are better structured. I just didn't know if there is the city has kind of SOPs for these meetings that you would say to a vendor. I know I'm an executive consultant and coach for in my business. And so what happens with a lot of my clients is, in order to make sure that vendors are operating at a certain level, they have SOPs for vendors.
Yeah, none of our vendors are doing any meetings without staff present.
So you run the meeting pretty.
We run so they're an extension of us and they're just support these PIOs, and then they also
I got
support in the public process, but we run the meetings. Yeah, so there's none of our vendors that are directly running a meeting, and for North Beach, we are exploring with that PIO just because as time goes on with these contracts and they renew, we add things to them. And some of the things we're adding now, from, the previous contract is all these hybrid capabilities. So we're looking for firms that have the ability to host hybrid meetings. So with this new one, we're gonna ask them to look into hosting the meeting and providing the technology. But the actual running of the meeting is gonna be, me as a North Beach person. Our staff are the ones running those meetings. So the PIO, at least under Neighborhood Affairs is around, we've never, and I don't think we're planning to allow them to run any meetings by themselves. Everything
Okay,
should be done at the city level, and
okay,
they're just support.
I got it,
Yeah.
Any other questions from our group about Ron, have you ever met through SOFNA or no, Diana, is it? The PIO for First Street?
No, I mean, Lauren has been,
By Lauren, sure.
Yeah,
yeah, but not,
yeah,
They
Lauren.
were present that's Ron, yes?
yeah,
They were present in the audience when Joe spoke at the SOFNA meeting regarding First Street. Because I wanted them to, be there and meet
yeah.
the players. So they were there to see the SOFNA meeting. But it was a SOFNA meeting where we were making a presentation. It was not our meeting. So
And I think, what I appreciate about this board is like a chance to reflect, and I think maybe where the confusion is coming is these PIOs are supposed to be like really administrative support for
Right,
our team.
I'm hearing that.
And I would prefer that, and this is, again, through discussions, I always felt that Lauren, Gabby, and our team are the face, and then this person is assisting. But they're also, you meet with Lauren, she gets your question, she's gonna hand it over to and track with Diana. You may get a response from Diana. So
Right.
maybe it's filling that gap so residents understand that, hey, and we looked into different ways of doing this, maybe having like a vanity email address that they can use that has Miami Beach.
Yep.
But I want everything on a Miami Beach front, like I want people to feel safe and secure with that they're dealing with a Miami Beach person.
So this explanation, to me anyway, that you've just, that we've come to here and you've
Yeah.
given us, would be helpful if residents know that, sort of know how it works, like a little map, like here's how we work. So you've got you and Lauren and Gabby and then we have
And I think,
PIOs, and we have a PIO for West Avenue, and a PIO for First Street, and blah, blah, blah. And that here's what they do.
yeah,
And maybe even.
maybe on our like about page, you will.
Like that, so that then people would know, okay, I might get an email from Diana or Heather,
Yeah,
whatever. Because see, they're part of the PIO team
yeah,
that supports,
yeah.
that would be helpful, no?
Yeah, that's a great point. In the different meetings, we always try to, try to introduce whoever that PIO person is. But again, the meetings are so far in between where if you move into the neighborhood, you're not gonna know.
Exactly, and I don't think people as a whole, and we've said this is part of really sort of our mission of talking about how do we better connect the city activities with the people who are
Yeah.
affected by the activities. And it's like world hunger, right? It's big, so, but as bad as world hunger, but, well, maybe for some people. But I think that, in an ongoing effort to do that, the more we can show how your area works and how the PIOs fit into it, the better.
Yeah,
And even if there were like, because I bet a lot of residents don't even know that these people exist.
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but I don't think residents should be hunting for people to.
No.
I think that residents ought to be encouraged to go to a point of contact, and then that person that, handles all residential inputs, whether that be Lauren.
Yep.
Kevin, and then they would say, here's what I'm looking to do, and then they would be
That's
steered
great.
to the right person, but I don't.
But they're gonna get an email from Heather or Diana if they field in a question. I mean, what I'm hearing is, and what I've actually seen in Sofna, in the days that I was there, is that, sometimes a question will come in, it'll go to the right point of contact, right? But then, because the PIOs do act as support, they may be given material, if I'm understanding this correctly, they'll say, gee, would you go ahead, Karen, and get an answer for this, and you do it as a PIO. So now, I contacted Kevin or Lauren, but I get something from Karen. I go,
Well, that
"Who's
has a
Karen?"
lot with the city, but as long as it's a CC with.
Yeah,
as long as they have
exactly,
copy.
I think to both,
Lauren,
yeah.
because that happens, anything, I could have a question about parks, I could have a
Oh,
question
I-
about anything.
All I'm saying is it doesn't hurt for people to know that there is a Heather, or
Yeah.
there is a Diana. They're not contacting them, they're contacting
Yeah,
the city.
But how are they gonna know that? I mean,
Well,
they're not
because
gonna
that's
go
the
to
only place they
website.
can
I mean,
contact.
I think to both of your points, we have, our system today is point of contact, my team. Then maybe I've always wanted to do a vanity email, maybe something to that effect. We do a project, not a project page, but an about page that just mentions our PIOs, but also, just so you know, it's not, we don't throw them in blind. We always introduce them in the sense that, this is Heather, she's our PIO, the public information liaison, she's gonna be assisting. So that way, when you do get a response from Heather, Heather's definitely copying us. She better be. So,
Well,
yeah. and-
no more job.
Yeah, so, no, they're all great about that, and not to pick on Heather, they're all gonna loop us in, so that way there's some.
I've heard great things about that.
Yeah, and it's not to single anybody out, like they all loop us in, but a great point, the incident, not incident, but the lady on Monday that she reached out, we were all copied. We were all getting her emails and we were like, okay, it's flowing, she's gonna come in and sign the document. Then she calls and is like, hey, I'm a little sketched out, I don't wanna go to this field office, it's like, yeah, no problem, come here.
That makes
So,
perfect sense.
yeah, so yeah, we're not gonna ever throw somebody in the blind, but I see your point that maybe on our page, where we have our staff
Just let them know
information, we
they're there.
include, hey,
That's
make
all.
it a contact from.
Yeah, just let them know they're there, not that they would I'm not seeking to create confusion, but I'm seeking to create some transparency around how things work. Because I think that's always a problem with residents, is that, well, if they run into a wall, which we did, or a place they can't get through, then we get the black box of City Hall, theory going on again, and we don't really want that.
No, and
So-
that's part of our mission is to be the resident one-stop shop, so if anyone ever hits a wall, they typically come to us and then building department items and whatnot, like we try to troubleshoot as much as we can, so they don't go to Aaron. Or Lewis, so they don't go.
Is it
there.
working? How's it working?
Working pretty well.
Okay, that's good. Well, I really appreciate it. If anybody has any more questions, Kevin or Lauren, with respect to PIs, I learned a lot because I think that the whole idea of sort of the evolution of PIO function with the neighborhood affairs division coming on, and also the fact that they are seen as support. They're not so spontaneous running around making meetings or
No,
work
no,
as
they shouldn't, they
support for
don't,
you.
yeah.
Got it. Okay, that's it for that topic, unless there's any more. Oh, okay, thank you, and then I
Great,
think you
no,
have
that's
another
perfect.
topic. You're on the hot seat.
Yeah.
So the next topic, I believe is project timeline updates. I think this goes back to earlier discussions, Madam Chair, about just building awareness of when construction's happening in the city, different types of construction, and just building awareness of that. And it was a prior item, I think from a few months ago.
Yeah, are there, I noticed that, I think anyway, the city website has gotten better with respect to the ability of people to access project construction updates.
Yeah.
I go on every once in a while just to look and see if I can find it.
We use it as staff, and it's a great information source, even for staff.
Yeah, no, it really is. It helps a lot. It's a lot more interactive now. We had some good people working on the website. But is there anything that you think we need to be aware of in terms of upcoming projects that?
Upcoming projects, I'll take this opportunity to plug again the North Beach project, the North Beach Phase 1. That's the next project, that's the next, hopefully it's not on the same track as West Avenue and First Street, but it's a little more smoother. But that's going to take place, we're gonna have a meeting in the last week of July. So hopefully that's gonna be, it needs to be announced this week, if not, it's gonna be delayed, but the meeting would be delayed, not the project. So that's
Thank you
the
for the
next big thing
clarification.
to listen into. And then tonight we actually have a Venetian Causeway meeting, and all our meetings are recorded, and it's gonna go online, so if you miss it, because we're here, you'll get an email, hopefully you'll get an email, that says, in case you missed it, and then you get a project page, and then you'll have all the project materials online. That's gonna be a big one for all of us, North Beach, Mid Beach, South Beach, because the Venetian Causeway is gonna have some lane closures, similar to what they did like last year, a couple months ago with the boring project. They're doing kind of phase 2 of that project, but it's a much before we already did Belle Isle, I think Toledo, now we're doing San Marino, but then we're doing all of them again. So a little bit of traffic
Oh, boy,
going into season.
I just stay away from it.
And then 41st Street looks great. I don't know if you guys have all commuted to 41st Street. It looks better than it did. I went out, I was there yesterday or so. All the big machinery between Pine Tree Drive and Indian Creek Drive is now gone, but the cones remain and there's still a 1-lane closure. but it looks like they're wrapping up that section, hopefully we can open 41st Street up quicker than anticipated. Then the section between Indian Creek and Collins, that's where there's still some construction, so you can't make the left turn. But all that's wrapping up fairly soon, so hopefully.
A couple questions.
Yeah.
First, on the North Beach one, do they have a location for a pump station or more than one, and have that?
Yeah.
Because those tend to be
That's-
the hot button issues.
Yeah.
What's going on?
No, and that's a great point, and going back to the focus group, that was something that was brought up to their attention. On North Beach, different from our other projects, maybe not West Avenue, but we actually have a beautiful parcel, that is city owned, right by the fire station. And that's like, you know, the first take, and then there are some other options that have already been shared, with that group, but it's, you know, I'm gonna be a point of the public meeting, but that's one of the things, that we've learned for previous projects, that this, you know, core infrastructure needs to be decided, because on both of these projects, moving the pump station has affected the timeline. So, yeah, that's one of the things going into it. And it's funny, because not even from the public information front, on the engineering front, when they brought on, I believe Jacobs was with the basis of design report. When they brought Jacobs on, it was like, this was one of the hot button topics. It's like, hey, this infrastructure, you know, this may change. So it was something, it was a lesson learned, if you will. Yeah.
I know from experience that's something you need to make sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out
Get a
of
lot of outreach on.
Then, second, I saw on the commission agenda, just was out, that they want to revisit the scheduling of the Alton Road project. What's going on there?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think it's the Alton Road FTOT project,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know off the top of my head. I know there's I haven't seen the item. I know there's a lot of, there's been a lot of discussions with FTOT, because I think their timeline's changing on their own. And then I remember a few months ago, there was a concern from one of the commissioners about the trees. So, but then I think with the recent rain events, maybe this is expediting it, but I don't have the latest on
Is
it.
that the one that was supposed to start in August?
That was supposed to start in 2020.
Yeah.
It was redone.
I think it's the one that goes from like 21st to.
Yeah, Michigan to like
okay.
43rd.
Right.
Yeah, now it's like
Well, it's
2029 or something.
Good gravy.
Yeah, so it keeps getting pushed.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I think they want to move
Water, was
it
it?
up. Sooner.
Anything else, Brian?
It's on projects.
Anything else?
What does the North Shore Phase 1 encompass?
So
Or
North
beach
Shore
section.
Phase 1
Beaches.
encompasses like town center, so it's gonna be like, I don't think it goes as far south as 65th, but it's like 67th Street. 69, is that the one that goes to where the fire station is? Yes, so 69th, and then it goes up to about like 73rd or so, and then I think it's not Collins, but I believe that's Hardy to the Bay, and it's that little pocket. And then the idea is to put new water and sewer infrastructure in that area, and then event that's phase 1, and then there's gonna be future phases that go into the smaller neighborhoods. Not smaller neighborhoods, but to the smaller side streets, and upgrade that infrastructure as well. And another lessons learned of road raising. All of the neighborhood improvement projects, we're supposed to have road raising incorporated in them. North Beach is a little bit higher, so there's not as drastic as a need as road raising, but that's something, with the designers and with the public outreach team, it's like road raising, pump station location, these are all lessons learned. That could derail and kill projects, so make sure that's all sorted in the beginning. So that's the area that encompasses, and that's kind of the overall scope. It's really brand new water, brand new sewer, and of course stormwater, pump stations and moving up the water.
Well, one other thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it falls into this category or this other business.
Yeah,
I saw that they're going to be discontinuing the ferry, the taxi with the siding.
Yeah, I think-
failure of
yeah.
the contract, which I know will make a lot of people happy if it's just way too much money for something.
yeah, we fielded complaints on that, so,
Yeah,
yeah, so that's on the commission agenda.
yeah.
It's not It's not, again, it's not canceled right now, but they'll discuss it and maybe, who knows.
Okay, so you're waiting, you're seeing.
Yeah, so, and to that point, that's a good example of, policy has to be done, so we have we're part of marketing communications, when you go on our city's website, at the top, there's a banner, right, it's a water taxi. So, it's gonna be promoted until it's not, so it'll be promoted, and then if the commission cancels the contract that day, then all that collateral goes away. If not, it continues, so,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
one of those things,
Yeah,
like,
I saw that.
Yeah.
I thought it was-
yeah, so we'll see where that goes,
Controversial water tax.
yeah,
But I did see a little banner when I went out.
yeah,
I have a couple of things.
yeah,
The first thing, the ferry, I tried
Yeah.
to take it the first week and then they're out of commission
yeah,
for the second week, I forgot, but that was very annoying. So
Yeah.
now I know what's happening with that.
yeah.
My second question is about elevating roads. What is the idea there? Are we going to elevate all the roads in Miami Beach?
No, so, sure, well, first I'll mention the water taxi, so the water taxi, that's exactly, they
I saw it on
they
next door and I was
started-
like, man,
Yeah, they had started and then the ship apparently broke, like the first or second week, it had mechanical issues, it didn't sink. But it had mechanical issues and then we had I think we had a pretty tight contract for this exact reason, because I believe it was like, the ship can't be out of commission for 2 days. If it is, the idea is they would bring us another one so we could have this continuous service. They failed to do that, so now the commission's looking to cancel it. It's operating now, so you have now until next Wednesday to ride it. I've been wanting to also go over to Miami and run around, but I haven't had a chance. And then Amy will touch on road racing.
yeah,
Yeah, so for, an analysis was done in 2020 to look at how many of the roads really needed to be elevated over the next 30 years or so in light of sea level rise projections, and it was about half of the roads in Miami Beach, so about 50%. And an elevation goal was established, and that would be high enough basically to keep the road bed out of the groundwater and to allow for tidal fluctuations that come from king tides, as well as sea level rise. And to basically, the lowest areas to make sure, like when we have high tides, we're not underwater. And so that's kind of the overall goal. We have about 4 neighborhoods that have been completed. And then all of them are different because some areas are much lower than others. Kevin mentioned North Beach is already much higher, so that the raise won't be as significant, but when we worked out, I think on average is about 2 feet in elevation. And that's to really protect against sea level rise and tidal flooding.
okay, and then my second question is, what will happen 30 years after that? Are we gonna raise roads again another 2 feet?
I think it's very possible. The approach we're using that most cities are using everywhere, we call it incremental adaptation. So we're trying to focus on what we can do now to offer protection timed with the lifespan of the asset. So roads generally last about 30 years. And it would be completely dysfunctional for us to elevate even, any more than our elevation goals, because you can imagine it would just be so disruptive and hard to live. So that is kind of the approach at this time, but also to be coordinated with private property. So our new resilience code is really based upon the elevation of the roadways. We all know we are in a high risk flood area, so we are 93% in the floodplain. And we, homes have to be built higher, buildings have to be built higher by federal flood code and by local. So we'll be a city in transition for a very long time, probably forever.
Yeah, and then another part of it is elevating residential and commercial properties. Miami Beach is doing that as well, from what I understand, right?
So we have, we're not personally as, a city doing it, but we have some really interesting, I think, things happening that are really unique to our city. So one is our newer resilience code makes sure new properties are built higher. So those are easier, right? It's new construction, they have understories, they are being built in a way that over time, even the ceilings can be higher so that the floors can be elevated to account for future sea level rise so that those buildings can stay for a long time. The current homes and buildings that were built a long time ago, before FEMA was created, they're kind of a challenge. So we created a program called our Fight the Flood Private Property Adaptation Program. Noel actually kind of manages that day to day. He has been out very busy visiting different properties, but we essentially offer a flood assessment where we have professionals go, look at the home, look at the property, give up to 3 alternatives based on what they're looking for. And we grant up to $20,000 of property. It's a matching grant, it's completely homeowner led, so it's voluntary. But we have a lot of properties underway, especially with the last few rain events, there's been a lot of interest. But we're really trying to incentivize resilience action so that people do flood mitigation before damage. 2 of those properties were actually selected by FEMA to actually be elevated, with FEMA paying for most of that funding. That's a very long process.
It's and you know, Dries,
That's
just
expensive.
as,
Very.
since it's your first time as our guest,
Yeah.
happy to have you, you know, Amy's department and well, the whole city really has dug in to this and done just an incredible amount of work. The private property adaptation program is kind of a trendsetter, I mean, in the country in a way, right? I mean, it's providing a lot of help for people, because it's obviously a long-term problem, issue, and so, you know, everybody's kids and grandkids will be dealing with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite familiar, I work in the climate tech space, so I have a good understanding of what's happening in
issues,
South
yeah.
Florida. And I worry that elevating roads and residential and commercial properties is somewhat of a short-term solution, since groundwater levels, like you were saying, are rising. So that's why I'm asking for some background.
It seems that for sure, there is a balance needed in the approach and the engagement. And you're welcome. I hope that you'll come to more meetings, either in person or virtually, as we talk more about these things.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, because infrastructure too, like in North Beach, sewage, are you protecting sewage from saltwater intrusion?
Yes.
We have
Yeah,
separate systems.
there's a separate program.
I know that's a whole nother thing, I mean,
Yeah,
in Miami, we have septic tanks that all need to get replaced for
Yeah,
1,000.
thankfully we don't have any,
I know.
here, thank God, cause that's like a headache in itself. But, we have another program and that's coupled with, you know, the areas that aren't getting these improvements right away. They're lining the sewage, pipes, with new lining to try to prevent intrusion and also any leakage from happening there.
And North Beach in particular, I mean, has had a lot of investment, it's been a huge concentration area because there's a water quality problem in the park, around the Parkview Island. And we know that is because all the stormwater is like draining into this little canal. Probably never should have been designed that way 80 years ago. And so Public Works really focused on all of North Beach, lining a lot of these pipes. It is a temporary fix, but it's a very good fix until fuller infrastructure projects can come through. And we are already seeing improvements, you know, from that. So between old sewer pipes and dirty stormwater, you know, there's a lot of reasons to replace this infrastructure.
Yeah.
You know, and sea level rise just exacerbates all of it.
Yeah, and the sewage systems now, where they're being installed with like, oh man, I forgot what it's called, but like a gravity flow thing, right? So that when there's too much water, the water doesn't go back through the sewage pipes and comes up, right?
Backflow preventers?
Yes, that.
Yeah, so I think that's being used in different areas of the city as appropriate, but we have to, I mean, we kind of have to transition from a gravity-based system to a pumped system
I can
because
imagine.
we're so low in elevation and we lack the, you know, the slope to drain.
Do we have any sewage going into the bay in the
No
first
way.
place? No, so the sewage
Sewage
system
is-
is already sealed, it's the stormwater
Okay.
where you might have backwater, where they put the backwater. Backflow preventer.
Yeah, we're gonna come up through the storm drains, if you will, right?
Yeah,
And it comes up through the storm drains and then, and we see it in king tides. We see it in high tides,
That happens.
yeah, I'm also asking because they installed a neat little, in West Park, they installed that big filter system
yes,
with keep it skin big.
did you see that?
Of course I did, good marketing.
We're trying.
Yeah, we're doing it. Well, I'm gonna move a little bit on, just to see if anybody, we have one more topic, which is topics. Do any of our, committee members have topics that they'd like to see, basically, or any topics that they'd like to see us address in the fall when we come back in September, October, November? there's somebody, I mean, you know, we had a great presentation from John Stewart, last time, and from Amy, from Debbie Tackett. Amy Tackett, I got you two now as one person, from Debbie Tackett. And I think there was a lot of substance there about sort of to Teresa's issue about what happens, you know, what's possible in terms of properties when they are being renovated or upgraded, when you have historic property. I mean, there's more that we could do there. There's certainly more communication information that we could share and work with. But I'm wondering if people on the committee have some things that they'd like to talk about or discuss or explore in terms of resiliency and infrastructure projects.
No, this is outside the scope, but I'm thinking of insurance.
Insurance?
Insurance.
Yeah.
What's insurable, what is not insurable now? Stuff that's not insurable, when is private, when government is getting involved with the city having help for people who
Well, one of our.
I see a big smile.
Yeah, everyone likes, no one likes insurance, but everyone likes the top, one of our committee members, Galen, just, I guess, a principal at a conference today, right?
Yeah, I know, if you like, I can give a little brief overview of that, but I mean, it's a huge issue. Insurance has been a major issue since I started here, and it's always been, I think, a concern as we're facing increased environmental risks. So today, Galen and his team were really putting on like a flood insurance strategy forum where they invited different people from risk modelers to, like, we were chatting about this for a few minutes while we're laughing. I sat next to the CEO of Citizens, you know, and people from all over the country really to how do we take our infrastructure projects and really get the recognition for that adaptation investment, and how does that translate into the risk models? And at the end of the day, can people get, you know, not only flood mitigation and reduce risk, but also reductions in policy premiums? So, you know, as a city, like, there's a few different things. You know, as the city, we have done quite a bit, and you know, I meet with our brokers, with our risk manager, and we go over everything we do for resilience, and they love it. They take it to London and they tell people everything that we're doing, and we've gotten like 18% insurance premium savings through that process because they see all these projects. So it's very important. But how does that translate to the homeowner?
Right.
And that's a completely different approach and model. So that's kind of what was being discussed today. How do we begin to bridge these gaps? You know, what is the right thing that as a homeowner you can do that will get you those insurance discounts? Because we all know with windstorm, I think it's a little bit more defined, but when it comes to flood, it's really hard to get any discounts from flood mitigation and investments in your property, unless you're building a brand new property. You know, I mean, it's just very at risk where you have water. So I think those are great topics, and I think it's, you know, it's both wind and home. It's also flood, but it's government assets as well as private property.
Yeah, maybe Galen would volunteer to give us an overview
Yeah.
of today's, you know, work and what sort of
Yeah,
happened.
I think that's a great idea. We have another full day tomorrow,
Oh, wow.
but the intent is to come out with some action items.
Thank you guys for having us.
Bye, thanks for coming.
You wanna talk about insurance?
You
We had
don't, see,
something
you're
else,
leaving,
another
it's
meeting.
too much.
It's gonna do hard.
I think that's a great topic.
Yeah, I think everybody's really.
So we can put that on and think about it.
So,
Looking up.
one other thing after our attention to, you know, the map where it shows the city, what areas are allowed, and I think you said it's under provision or something like that. Cause
Say
it's
that again?
2 years old, the map that shows the elevations. You know, you can proceed to look at your own property and say,
Yes.
where am I, and all that. And you mentioned it, and then you said, oh, but it's outdated. I forget, something like that. And I did go to it, look to see it. Yeah. But is that in process? Do you know where that stands?
Yeah, we can get the latest elevation map from Public Works. It's something, you know, this elevation data is actually flown by the county at a certain frequency. And then they update their maps, that information is used for different projects. So they do it at a certain frequency and I can check with Public Works.
Yeah, because I think what you had said last time was we didn't have the latest updated.
It's possible, okay.
You know, or whatever, or there's the, you know, I tried doing like a search and there's the. I wasn't finding it too easy.
Yeah, we can look into that. I think there's also certain websites you can go to find your elevation that might even be more user friendly for like a resident, rather than maybe what we're utilizing for like construction projects. But let me chat with Public Works team.
Anything else, Alana?
I think last time I was here, we spoke a little bit about those text message updates, how to sign up for those text messages, and I did, and it was very helpful. But could it be that Miami Beach and Manhattan Beach are like
Yes,
confused?
I know, but I heard of an incident of this as well. Are you getting Manhattan Beach updates?
I'm getting a few, like, you know, some park in Manhattan Beach had like somebody in the toilet, I don't know.
That's so interesting. So, randomly, like it hasn't happened in a while, but I'll get like not Boston, some little town in Massachusetts or something, and I'll get like a PD update.
Was it
from
an
them.
MB town, like?
No, this one was like, I think it was like Hudson or something, and that was just weird. But I've heard of this Manhattan Beach, I think there was once an update that came in from them.
I got
It
a
was
few.
very strange. So that's interesting that you're
Probably
getting.
like a handful.
Do you have like a local area code? Or,
New York area code.
okay,
No,
But
interesting.
I remember signing up for Miami.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let me, I could check with the vendor, because I know very rarely we get these random northeast town, but Manhattan Beach is California.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting, but yeah, we'll check into that. Yeah, interesting. Wow.
Karen?
Funny.
I don't think I have anything further. I'm really excited to know all this stuff about the PIO, and I would kind of stick to my guns
Yeah,
and maybe just let people know PIOs exist. Not that they need to be contacted, but, all right, so, we do meet again, September 18th at 4:30. It looks like all the rest of our meetings are at 4:30, right?
Yes, for the rest of the year.
Yeah. September 18th would be our next meeting, and, if there's anybody online right now.
No.
We have our one stellar
Public comment.
guest, our public. And we thank you. And so with
Our
that,
first guest ever,
our first live guest, we've had a
I
couple
feel
of virtual
honored.
guests.
Where's
but
my golden star?
We don't have anything to give you, well, if you come again, perhaps we'll have something for you. Okay.
I look forward to it.
So, I'll make a motion to adjourn in that case. Second, like lots of seconds, and everybody's aye. So, have a wonderful August, everybody.
Yeah.
And, we'll see you in September. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stay safe, stay cool.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Stay dry.
so, you know, all the lights have been covered now.
No way.
no.
I haven't been out in
I was just about to say, I haven't been able to see.
Oh,
you,
we have a
but-
new sea turtle ordinance coming.
I saw something on the agenda, yeah, is that gonna affect what we've done already?